Today, we are going to talk about a skill that's absolutely critical in business: competitive analysis. And look, this isn't really about spreadsheets and numbers. It's about a complete mental flip, learning how to think exactly like your biggest rival. So let me just start with a quick question for you. When you're thinking about your business, about your strategy for growth, where does your focus naturally go? Are you thinking about your team, your sales numbers, your plans? Just be honest. Most of us, we're hardwired to look inward. We get obsessed with our sales, our products, our strategy. But the real secret sauce, the real game changer, is flipping that script. It's about stopping that navel-gazing and instead projecting what your competition is going to do next. And that brings us to our first big idea here. Because that constant inward focus, well, that creates your single biggest blind spot. Seriously, this is probably the most common mistake you can make. When you only concentrate on your own numbers and your own plans, it's like you're driving a car but staring at the dashboard the whole time. You're completely ignoring the other cars on the road, which, leaves you wide open to getting blindsided. Okay, so if we're going to focus on them, we have to get crystal clear on who they actually are. So let's talk about how to define your direct rival. And listen, we're not talking about every single business in your industry. A direct competitor is way more specific. We're talking about a company whose product is really similar to yours, and this is key, is fighting for the wallet of the exact same customer. That is who you need to be watching like a hawk.
All right, and this is where things get really interesting and, okay, a little tricky. Once you know who to watch, you're faced with what we call the prediction challenge.
Think about it. Projecting your own company's sales, that's one thing. You've got all the data, right? You know your costs, your prices, everything. But trying to project a competitor's performance? Whoa, that's a whole other ballgame. You don't have their internal numbers. You're flying blind, and that makes it so much harder. But here's the thing, that challenge is totally worth it. The goal isn't to get a perfect prediction. It's not about being a psychic. The real goal is to build a stronger, more bulletproof strategy, simply by thinking through what your rival might do. It's all about being ready for anything. Which leads us to, honestly, the most powerful part of this whole thing. It's time to stop just thinking about your competition and start thinking like them. To really win, you have to do this little mental exercise. I want you to imagine, just for a minute, leaving your office, walking across the street into their headquarters, and sitting down in their CEO's chair. You have to literally put yourself in their shoes and start asking some really tough questions. This is the big one. If you were them, what would you do next? And don't just stop there. Really push yourself on the why. What's their logic? Are they feeling pressure from investors? Maybe their sales are slumping in a key region. What opportunities are they seeing that you might be completely missing? Now, let's talk money. If you had their exact budget, their team, their tech, where would you put the next dollar to get the biggest bang for your buck? Would you dump it all into a huge marketing campaign, or would you put it into R&D to build a better product? Where they spend their money, that tells you everything about their real priorities. And what about their actual product? From their point of view, is it perfect? Or does it have some obvious flaws? If you were running the show over there, would you start adding new features to charge a higher price? Or would you maybe simplify it, make a cheaper version, to attack a part of the market that you currently dominate? And how would you grow? It's a classic dilemma, right? If you were them, would you pour money into broad advertising to build the brand for the long haul? Or would you hire a bunch of new salespeople to just hit the phones and crank up revenue right now? The answer to that tells you so much about how they think about winging. So, when you start doing this, when you make this way of thinking a regular habit, you unlock this huge, almost unfair strategic advantage. And it really is that simple. When you truly understand your competitors, not just what they sell, but how they think, what drives them, you're not just playing on the same field anymore. You are suddenly several steps ahead of them in the game. And this is the payoff. This is why you do it. You stop just reacting to what they do. Instead, you start anticipating what the market's going to do next. You make smarter, better decisions. And the best part? You can actually counteract their moves, sometimes before they've even made them. Ultimately, what this whole exercise is about is estimating their piece of the pie. It's about looking at the entire market and trying to project not just your slice, but theirs too. When you can do that with some confidence, that's when you really understand the world you're competing in. So I'm going to leave you with this one thought. The next time you're in a strategy meeting, before anyone asks, what's our next move, I want you to be the person who stops everyone and asks, first, what's theirs?